All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Florida Hockey Bros. My name is David, joined by my brother Dario across the screen. Um, Today we're doing hot takes, which is my favorite type of show. Um, I remember the one we did last year. I had very hot, cold takes, I guess, or cold hot takes. Very obvious stuff, but that was kind of fun, and that was kind of an introduction to starting the podcast. So looking forward to today's episode and having a laugh since my brother takes all this shit really serious. So yeah, man, we're gonna do some off-season hot takes. So we're gonna talk about signings, trades, anything that we think might work or might not work, and then we'll also do a standings, sort of a standings hot take. Hot takes. We're gonna do three each and kind of go from there. So I think you should get us started, Dario. It's always, give me time to look up to see what I'm gonna say.
Bro, you always have the worst hot takes. Your hot takes are never hot. They're not really takes.
I come up with them on the spot.
We should do obvious takes and see how that goes. And I think you win that one.
All right, off season. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. And this is just to have some fun and also, but just kind of break it down, go against the grain a little bit with some of the moves. Um, First thing I'm gonna say, and I mentioned last video at the end of the last video, but I I'm getting my hot take is that the Capitals had the best like off season of all the teams. I know there's a hot take, and some people think it was Nashville, some people think it was Tampa going psycho, some people think Chicago and the Sharks did great. Utah, like I know some of these teams that are not gonna necessarily compete have made actually a lot of great moves. I think the Sharks had a really good off season. I think Chicago added some guys. I think it's a bit overrated what they did, but at least they did something. But anyway, I just, I think the Caps, for me in particular, trading for Jacob Chikrin, I think was a really smart move. He's a puck mover. He's skilled. He's still young. Didn't quite work out or really fit in Ottawa. I think the Capitals are a really strong defensive system. They were like one of the best defensive teams. And had some of the best goaltending last year. And I love that they traded for him. Like, not a lot of people necessarily saw that coming. And then also Matt Roy, I think. I don't know if it's Roy with these last names, Canadian last names, you never know.
Who knows?
But yeah, he was a really good signing. I know maybe a little bit too much money, people are saying or whatever, but he's a proven defender. I just think those two guys are really going to elevate the decor. And I actually think that they were the proper team to take a chance on Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's running out of places to play without people really giving up on him. And I don't think he was properly utilized in LA. I don't think he was fully given a chance to win. I think that LA is kind of a low key of a mess right now in terms of a team, and even the playoffs, the players weren't happy with the coaching and how they played. They haven't really made any changes in the off season. I think things in LA are trending really, really down right now. And so, yeah, I think that for me, taking a chance on this guy who could be a top six center, he's a big guy. He's scored 60 points before. I'm glad that the Caps are not just laying down, even though they're going into the last years of Ovechkin's career, and that can look kind of silly because he's just trying to get his goals. I think this is kind of a more honorable way to go out. It's just to say we're still going to compete for a playoff spot. We're still going to bring some talent and try to bridge that transition until Ovi retires and then see what we can do. They're kind of doing a retooling versus a rebuilding. And, maybe long term, they could use more youth and more draft picks. But I respect what they did. I think they did a little bit of everything. They went for a trade with Chikrin. They signed some people. And took a chance on Dubois. And I think that, with their coach, where's it, Spencer Cadbury or whatever, he seems like a very smart guy and obviously surprised everybody. Not the most fun team to watch, but props to them for making the playoffs over a bunch of teams that everybody expected. And now going into next season, if they can replicate some of that defensive and goaltending performance and with this new additions, and I like that Dubois and Chikrin are kind of more offensive additions. So maybe they'll look a little bit more dynamic. So again, I'm not saying they're going to contend. They're going to have to compete for like that wild card spot. But But I just respect that they went for it, man. I respect that they're telling their fans, maybe we can make the playoffs again. And, if you're contending, competing in terms of making the playoffs, you're making money, you're getting your fan base excited, instead of having this sad thing that's happening in Pittsburgh, where to me, they're still banking on what they did last year, and that having Carlson work out and having the power play be better. But these guys are still getting older, and they haven't really done anything in Pittsburgh. They haven't blown it up, or committed to try to make a serious run. And so I think Pittsburgh's just in limbo. And to me, that's worse, because at least with they've moved on from Kuznetsov and some of the other guys in the for the Capitals. The Pittsburgh still holding on to all their old guys. So anyway, just respect for the Caps, man. I think pretty bold, and I like when teams are making smart moves and taking measured risks.
Yeah, no, I think I think the only reason I'll disagree is because I don't know how they're gonna. I'm not sure how they're gonna score. They were one of the lowest scoring team last year, if not bottom 2 or 3. And that was really like their main issue. I do agree that Lindgren and the goaltending was really good. So they can definitely get there if it all clicks. I just don't know if that's gonna happen. I do think that they had to do something. Otherwise, they were kind of limbo. Are they gonna rebuild? You still got Ovechkin, and how are you gonna handle how are you gonna fill in that top 6 so you can actually compete and score? So that would be my only doubt with that take, but it's definitely a hot take because of that. I do think that you know it's one of those teams that and this actually sort of compares to my first take, which is the Chicago Blackhawks. I was surprised by their moves. I thought that they would be well. They're definitely rebuilding. So I was surprised that they got Bertuzzi and Teravainen. I think that really surprised me. And if you look at the roster, it's not really that bad. They still have Taylor Hall, who can be a good player. And I don't know. Like the only thing that confuses me about the Blackhawks is are they trying to just get a bunch of like mentors for the young guys for Bedard or are they trying to kind of build something that could get there? They have Seth Jones. They got TJ Brody, Alec Martinez. So they do have a lot of veterans. But I think that with the moves they made and if Bedard takes a step forward, which could be tricky, sophomore season can always usually they take a step back. I think they do have a chance to maybe compete for the second wild card. They're not gonna get there. I don't think they don't have the goaltending. But that was my first thought when we talked about hot takes and the offseason. I was just surprised that they actually offered Bertuzzi that and they brought in TJ Brody and Alec Martinez and they kind of just said, all right, we'll just bring in, they made soup with all these guys and see what comes out of it. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I'm less sold on the Blackhawks moves. And I'll tell you why. When you look at the Caps, like Ovechkin has 2 more years and then he's off the cap and probably retires. Backstrom is an LTIR now with his issues and probably can't play anymore. And he's a UFA after this year. You have Mangiapane, 1-year contract, or at least 1 year left on the contract. Tia Oshie also is a guy that can move on from. He's 37. And then you have Dylan Strome, who took a huge step. You have Protas, who's a very young center that looked good. Connor Michael, very young, looked good. Sonny Milano had a breakout season. So they have, Nick Dowd, and who's a vet, also coming off the, Taylor Radish. They have all these guys coming off they have a lot of cap next season, a lot of UFAs coming up. So they're going for it right now with some of these additions to compete. Again, not make a run, but to stay relevant. Then they're going to have a lot of cap to be able to really retool completely and decide what to do. And they have a couple of young guys already on the roster coming up and gives them another year for those young guys to compete and learn. Whereas when you look at the Blackhawks, man, like Bertuzzi, it's a nice addition, but like, come on, he's not going to be in that kind of a team, like a huge deal breaker. They lost Tyler Johnson, they lost Sam Lafferty too. And then, TJ Brody looked kind of washed in Toronto. Alec Martinez is very old, I think. And Teravainen is like a great like third line guy in Carolina in that system. He's a good player, but I just don't see these additions based on what they've lost and based on the roster they have and how young it is and how bad on defense they were and stuff. I just think that it's nice. These are names. Like they're not just saying, "No, we're going to stink and we're going to do nothing." They're giving out contracts. But again, Alec Martinez, TJ Brody, I don't think they're going to drastically improve that defense at all. You're probably going to have what happens with these old guys, and we saw it with Chicago this year. They brought in these veterans, like half the guys were injured and out for the season, and guys don't want to play through injuries in a meaningless season. I just don't see them competing for a playoff spot this year at all. Because I think people overlook defensive deficiencies. Look at what happened to New Jersey. The Devils were hot, 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 and then they lose their main defender and can get the goaltending right. And the goaltending is part of it, but it's also the defense. Buffalo, all the talent, can defend. Ottawa, all the talent, don't know how to defend. They lose 5-4, they lose 5-3, can make the playoffs. So I don't know. For me, it's like I get it that they made a lot of moves, and because who's there, it seems like they're trying. But I think low key, outside of the Bertuzzi signing, even Travani, I think is a little bit older. I'm just not that impressed. I guess I'm more impressed with like what the Sharks did. So I'll disagree with you back on that being a good those being like good moves.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that you would just have to wait and see how that unfolds. I was just surprised that they actually, to me, just felt like, okay, we're gonna kind of go for it to see if we can sneak in on a wild card, because otherwise why waste that money in Bertuzzi? Why not just like retool another year, get Bedard going into year 3 after this season, and then start building into start building a contender going forward. But I was surprised, and I do think that they improved. Maybe they're just trying to get out of that bottom 2 or 3 in the league. And your point stands. I do think the Sharks did a good job. The Ducks, like all their players are like 20 years old. Those are teams that kind of recognize where they are and what they have to do. I just thought, the Blackhawks did something that might pay off. Even if they don't make the playoffs, just kind of trending in the right direction and making sure Bedard knows that they're trying to, contend, and it's not just, hoping that he carries that franchise or whatever. But yeah, all right, let's go into the second one. What's your number 2?
So my second hot take is that the signing of Jake Gensel is a mistake. And I know that for some people that might not be a super hot take, but a lot of people are huge fans of Gensel, and he's younger than Stamkos. But I think Gensel's 30 years old. And the deal's for 7 years, right? And it's like what, $9 million a year, right? And I know
Yeah.
Gensel, I know Gensel puts up points. I know he's won with Pittsburgh, but I have to say, man, watching him, for Carolina, he's a small guy. I just don't think he's as much of a factor defensively. Yeah, he's going to turn 30 when the season starts. He's a small guy. This contract's going to be until 30-31. I just don't. I don't know. I guess I'm not as sold. I know that he's, again, put up points, but when you look at these seasons, like outside of like, the big run with Pittsburgh, where he put up 21 points in 25 games in the playoffs. Had another season when he put up 21 points in 12 games, but obviously they didn't win that year. He's has a couple of 40-goal seasons. Mostly he's injured and scores like 20, 23, 30. I don't know. I just don't. This is not even a Reinhart like 57-goal season or an elite two-way play. Like Reinhart gave you 57 goals and was fourth in and votes for what Barkov won, the Selkie. So I don't know. I just feel like and he's known, like, everybody says the smartest guy in the league, and he's only 27 or whatever, 28, gonna be 28. So I don't know. I feel like making less than Gensel. So for me, Gensel is like kind of a head scratcher. A guy's about to turn 30. You give him 7 years. A guy who's prone to getting injured like every other season, hasn't played a full season in a while. And it's not like, he scored 40 goals 2 years ago. But I don't see 100-point season here. I don't see like, even a 90-point season. Only one season with points in the 80s and one in the 70s or two in the 70s. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like a little bit overrated, and I know again he's performing in the playoffs or whatever, but Pittsburgh hasn't gotten out of the first or second round in the playoffs in forever. And for Carolina, he did score 9 points in 11 games, so I just didn't seem as big of a factor to me, the eye test.
Yeah, and I feel like Tampa had to. It's hard to say overpay because that's a contract that the coming years might look good. It's not going to be a huge percentage of your cap, but considering there's a non-tax state or whatever, with all that going around, I would have thought that maybe it would have been more of a team-friendly deal because 9 million in Florida is the equivalent of like 10.5 or 11 somewhere else, and he's not that type of player. But that's kind of what those guys are making nowadays. Nylander and these wingers are kind of making that type of money, so I get it. But I thought that was a strange move. I don't know about the fit there. But the Lightning just kind of they just weren't happy with what happened last year. I think that for the Lightning, it's the problems are beyond just what's on the ice. For me, I think Cooper, it's time for him to go. He's a great coach. I just think it's time for him to go. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But yeah, I agree with you there. I have no problem with that. All right, my other two. I'll touch on the Leafs first. For me, and it's not that much of a hot take because people don't really know what to expect, but I think their goaltending tandem are gonna just it's not gonna go well. They kind of just went with Wall as a starter, and they figure let's bring in Stollers, who is a really good backup. But the problem with that is that Stollers is a backup, no matter how you put it. Once the workload just isn't there in his history for them to kind of just go all in. I think the contract for Wall, it's right. The money was right. I think that they really, Trelevin did a good job with that. But if Wall gets injured, I think they're screwed. I don't think Stollers can handle the load. I don't know who their third goalie is going to be. Is it that Helleby guy, the Hell Beast, or whatever they call him?
They got Matt Murray, but Matt Murray's old and
yeah,
not old, but like he's been injured
and he hasn't played in like 2 years, like a year and a half or something. So I just think that's something that is like I said, it's not this crazy hot take because Wall, when he plays well. But I think that's gonna do them in this season. I think that's gonna really hurt them if they're relying on both of those guys. One, being 100% healthy with Wall, and two, that Stollers can actually come in and play well. I don't think Murray's gonna play. And I don't know that the team is that much better to be to do anything better than what they did last year. If anything, they'll be worse, in my opinion. But I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, the Leafs, like it's just easy to.
Yeah, I was gonna go with like Tanev and stuff, but I'm like, that's not a hot take.
No. I think Stollers is, he's a good goalie. He's a good backup. He put up some good numbers. He's a huge guy. He's pretty agile for his size. He can, we saw him let in some soft ones here or there. I don't think he looks like the kind of guy that can carry the load. He just doesn't give that kind of impression. And, I have to say, him and Bob were helped by the defensive system of the Panthers. So we saw Bob struggle when we were playing full on offense, and really, everybody was saying, oh, he's overrated and getting overpaid and whatever. It really took commitment to a defensive system for him, and he had better defense in Columbus too when he looked good. He won the Vesinas. I think at the end of the day, Stollers is not the answer. I think Stollers is a great backup. Just if you have a reliable starter and you have Stollers as your backup, I think it's a great move. I just don't buy. I saw the guys from the Locked On Leafs trying to rank the goalie tandems in the Atlantic, and they had them third. And I was like, come on, man, stop it. Just because Wall's been great at times. Like when you see him play, when he's hot, he looks excellent. But you have to sustain that. Spencer Knight has looked incredible at times for the Panthers. We've seen him shut out people. He had 5 shutouts in the AHL last year. He at times can look elite, and at times he can be shaky. And obviously, we've seen that may not be always reliable. Wall is not a kid anymore. He's 25, and he's been injured every single season, basically. And so he's not a proven starter. And so I just don't know that was the smartest move. And I feel the same way about some of the other guys that they signed. I just think I think what people don't want to say about Toronto, and again, we don't need to get into it, but it's like I'm starting to really get the impression that they have a very limited pool of guys. Like Monter mentioned in an interview yesterday that he had talks with Toronto, but it wasn't even close. Like it wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to give him that money. I don't see them taking swings. I don't see them really, doing that kind of stuff. I think the GM is going after the obvious moves. The guys he knows OEL from Arizona because he worked there, and obviously he's been obsessed with Tanev because he knows him forever. He likes Domi because it's like the perfect guy to have on the team and sell your team. I just don't know that. I think they're worse, and I think the decor is worse than people realize. That's going to be my hot take. Everybody's saying, "Oh, the decor looks good now with Tanev and OEL." I think that's overrated. They're one injury away in the top 4 from being just a complete disaster and one of the worst decors that you'll see in the playoffs. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think Stolarz it's an overrated move, but
Yeah. I just think that, instead of maybe trying to go get a starting goalie, Markstrom, whoever, and having Wall maybe be the backup and given time to maybe not carry the load. Like that's the only thing I'm curious about with them. Are they going to split it 50-50? Stolarz is going in there with the mentality that he might he could take the starting spot. So that's just kind of interesting to me. I think that will be a failure in my opinion. So yeah. All right, let's do the last one for the off season.
the Rangers stink, bro. They they didn't do shit. They traded for what? Riley Smith, which is such a lateral move. Older guy on the way down. Didn't play well for the Penguins. They brought Sam Carrick, who I think didn't even play late in the finals or whatever. And they lost Wimberg and they lost Goudreau, or they kind of pushed away Goudreau. I know they have a bit of money, but they have to extend Shesterkin and all that, and the whole Jacob Trouba drama. I just don't. I don't feel like for a team that supposedly was like one of the cup contenders and kind of favorites and won, what was it? Didn't they win the President's Trophy or whatever? And they're kind of, they need to go for it now. They're like a veteran team. It's not like they have a bunch of kids. A lot of their guys are over 30. I know they don't have a ton of cap space, but make a move, man. Trade Trouba if you're going to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like trade somebody. You got to accept that some of your guys don't look like winners. Sabanajat shrunk against the Panthers, straight up, bro. Panarin is overrated. He's a regular season merchant. Like he's like the Marner of the Rangers, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, he can score here or there, might have, but I'm not scared of him, and again, they had to resign and extend some of their RFAs and all that stuff, but I don't know. I just don't see any like going for it. They're kind of running back. This team has been together for a while. They've always made the playoffs and lose in the first, second, and maybe the conference finals. But yeah, kind of staying pat, doing nothing. I mean, I was also going to say the same about the Islanders, and like really, but the Islanders are more like it's more expected. The Islanders never do anything and always have the same guys, and it's always the same team. And the Islanders are the perfect team of like the entire team is the same guy for the first 3 lines. It's like good players, but no real like over the top. It doesn't feel like a balanced roster. And so anyway, yeah, the Rangers, man. My hot take is the Rangers are kind of, afraid, I guess, in the off season to make a move. When you would think that, maybe staying pat is the right move. Like I think it's a huge mistake. So.
Yeah. I think they just looked at it like that. They're like, all
Sorry, I'll
right.
say this. I don't think people realize that even though that series with the Panthers looked close, that was just striking. That
Oh yeah, yeah.
the numbers say Panthers dominated that most of that series
Oh yeah,
completely.
yeah. If not for Sturkin and Swayman, the Panthers, win in five, if not sweep at least one of those two teams. I think, looking back, yeah, man, they're right there with my last take, but I agree. I think I don't know what to expect. I think they're gonna be fine during the season. They're a veteran team. Kreider, um, Panarin, those are vets. Trocheck is a vet by now. So I think they'll be fine during the season. They're gonna do their power play stuff and all that good stuff. It's easy, to kind of beat up on the bottom 16 teams in the league. But yeah, that was a strange one. I all these teams with really good goaltending are kind of doing the same thing. They're kind of not doing anything drastic, and I just think that's a mistake. Goaltenders can have a bad season. It's kind of um, it's kind of obvious when you look at it. And the Truba thing, I agree. They should have just traded him when he has I think a 15 team no trade list or whatever that he had to submit. But everybody else has a no move clause. Kreider, Panarin, Trocheck. So I think they were kind of stuck with that. But yeah, that kind of ties in with the Boston Bruins. I just don't know what the Bruins want to do. Like I don't get the vision. It's they have a great system, very defensive system. They have an excellent goaltender, but I think that losing Allmark is going to cost them in the regular season. I think that's going to drop them in the standings in a major way. Um, they still haven't announced Swayman. I'm sure they're working on a deal, and I'm sure it's going to happen. But that cap space might just it might be tricky for them in the next 3 to 5 years. And I just don't know what they're doing. I mean, Marchand is old. He's getting older. You can't expect the team to, fight that hard and play that hard year after year. So I that's one of those teams that I feel like they got worse. Elias Lindholm is not gonna be a difference maker whatsoever. He's a good player and he might be a good player. I know that he's solid and all, but I just thought that losing Allmark and they had no choice in a way, but that's really gonna hurt them. And I kind of put him in the same tier as the Rangers as far as really good teams from the last year, the last couple of years that kind of just stay put and they didn't really want to make any splash moves or anything major. I mean, the Olmark trade was really bad. Corpusalo is not it's not a good goalie, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I don't know what you think of that. I mean, you live outside of Boston, so
Yeah, I disagree with you. I don't know that the Bruins can make like huge moves at the moment. I don't know that they have all the assets or the players to do that. The few good players they have, they've committed obviously to some of their core with McAvoy and Pasternak. But I'll say I think Lindholm is the kind of player that in that system can thrive and offer strong two-way play. People forget that at his best in Calgary, he was putting up points. He played pretty well when he found his stride in the playoffs for Vancouver. He was one of their best players. I think in a first or second line center role with the Bruins just get the most out of these kinds of players. And I think Lindholm, a little bit overpaid, but I think he is what they needed. They were soft down the middle, and that's as good a guy you can get at the center position. The other option would have been to go after Pierre-Luc Dubois, which was sort of rumored last year. I think Lindholm is a better option. Obviously, again, for the Caps, he makes sense, but the Bruins are a little bit more of a competing team. I think Swayman is their starter, the future. You couldn't keep both. You're going to lose Olmark. He wasn't even just to not be a starter. Olmark wasn't going to stay. Was the trade great? No. I think Corpusalo is not as bad as Ottawa made him look. I think he's a solid guy, and I think again in that system with a better defense, they have a very excellent defensive system. I think he can be a serviceable backup, which is kind of what they need. And you just got to let Swayman go. I mean, he looks elite against the Panthers. He looks to me legit like he could take the reign as the best goalie in the league in a couple of years. And so I don't know. I think that, wasn't the worst thing ever. And I think Sidorov in the short term, it's a great addition. He's a physical guy. He fits the culture. He looked good in the playoffs. I think that they did enough to slightly improve their teams talent-wise than what they had last year. And they do have some young guys coming up. They always find these guys in the margins that can compete. And I think that a couple of those younger guys coming up, I think Sidorov adding a little bit more depth to the defense, bringing the kind of centerman that they needed. So it isn't just, was it Charlie Coyle, whoever, in the middle, in the top line. I think they're going to be a competitive team. I think that they're going to compete for a playoff spot again. Are they going to win a cup with this score? Marchand's older, but again, you can just kick out Marchand, and so much like the Caps, they're trying to manage where they're at right now and trying to retool and see if they can move with McAvoy and Pasternak to a next generation. And they'll have maybe more cap space down the line, but maybe use that Marchand money for some other stuff. But for now, I thought that wasn't the worst thing to do. I think Sadorov's contract is not going to age well, and maybe Lindholm also won't. But in the next 3 to 4 years, I think those were pretty solid additions, and I can see their culture just elevating those guys and make it. They're not going to be easy to play. I mean, they're never easy to play against, and with those two guys, they're just going to be a lot harder, in my opinion. And Swayman becoming more of the starter, I don't think that's a downgrade. And Korpisalo can give them enough games, maybe 20, 30 games a season. I don't know. I guess I didn't have as much of a problem with what they did. I know it wasn't flashy, but they're cap strapped, and they did the best they could with two guys that are solid guys. I don't know. That's my take.
Yeah. I just think that it's just hard to replicate the same thing year after year. It's my concern with the Panthers, actually. And I mean, Swayman had an all-time performance in the playoffs against the Panthers, and they still lost in 6. And it's just, just counting on that consistency from your goaltender is a dangerous game. And I just don't see it. I don't see how they're gonna be right back up there. And I'm guilty of the same thing that a lot of pundits were last offseason, where they thought that they would just drop off once Bergeron retire and Krejci and all that stuff. But I just don't see it. I mean, based on the way Swayman played, they should have, won that series against the Panthers if they had any scoring or anything, any way of. I mean, the Panthers are not even an offensive team. Like, they're not that talented on offense. So I thought that was, I don't know. I know that they can't help it, but I just think that they're going to have to kind of just, and I guess that's what they're doing. They're kind of riding the wave and see where it goes. And then once they're able to make some moves, they'll sign somebody. But yeah, I thought they got worse and who knows, maybe Swayman plays like a beast again, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I just think that the issue with them is that the guys that you need to elevate their play the way that the Panthers have, they just haven't to the extent that you need. Also, I mean, I kind of want to say the coach a bit overrated, but Montgomery, I'm not the biggest fan. We've known that. But yeah, you look at Marchand. He's not going to give you what he used to. He's only making $6 million. But then Charlie Coyle making $5. Pavel Saka making $4. Trent Frederick making 2.3. Those guys are not giving you at the key moments where you're getting from Evan Rodriguez, you're getting from Lustrainen, you're getting from Bennett, Verhage, who are making $4 million. Those guys are just giving you better play in the playoffs than like Saka and Coyle that are making more money, actually. Trent Frederick, who I think was a high pick, never really panned out. He's already 26 and more of like a bottom 6 player. And yeah, you have the high end with passing at Lindholm now, but you do lack that secondary scoring. And, defensively, they're solid with McAvoy, Lindholm. Hampus Lindholm had a down year, so he needs to give them more. But then you have Zadorov, Brandon Carlo, Andrew Peak now, Mason Lohrei, who's a really young guy that's really, really good. And then that Witherspoon guy that they extended. So not the worst decor. But yeah, they just need some of these secondary, like Lindholm and some of these guys to Lindholm had an excellent season when they broke the record in the regular season. Then he was really nowhere to be seen last year. So yeah, they just the makeup of the team is kind of what's off, and I feel like the Coils and Sakas and stuff may need to be replaced either by younger talent or just maybe make a couple of trades to refresh the team with a bit more offense. Um, and yeah, that's what it is, man. They're just not very deep at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
But
so
yeah,
that'll
man,
be
those are the takes. We could talk a little bit about team takes for next season.
yeah. Let's look at the teams and the standings, and it's always fun to look at that and see how that works out. I think the West was wild this past season. So all right, so what's your first hot take on teams and standings
My first
for
hot
the
take is
season?
that the Detroit Red Wings are going to be worse than they were this year. I think that a lot of people are still naming them as one of the teams that are going to be in the bubble competing or maybe even making the playoffs because they were very close this season and, that has a couple of hot runs. I look at their team. They brought back Patrick Kane. Is that correct? Um, right? And the moves made no sense to me. Like what they did in the offseason is weird. They brought in a couple goalies. Now they have like four goalies, none of whom are like proven, like super proven. Um, they lost some veterans. They're bringing guys that don't necessarily play a lot of defense, Tarasenko and Kane, and they're focusing on offense. Like they did this season. I think the defense was like what let them down. And then you look at the decor. I'm just not that impressed with a lot of the decor that they have. I don't know what Eiserman's doing there. I think they overachieved last year. And I know they got some, they got Lucas Raymond, and they got some good players and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm not sold on Detroit. I can see them being like an up and down team, and then having a down year, and then having another team sneak up that nobody is expecting to. I think everybody's down on Ottawa. Maybe a coaching change and some of the personal change might help them sort of finally break through. Maybe the Devils have a bounce back. Um, I'm not a sold on Buffalo, but yeah, my hot take is that Detroit misses the playoffs and that they're not going to be better than they were this year. I think that if anything, they might be a little bit worse. Um, I just don't like the roster construction. I don't think that they have a good defensive makeup. I think their forwards are only trying to get their cookies. That's all they do. And they're going to get some. They're going to win some games. They're not going to be like bottom of the league or whatever. But um, I'm just not sold on them being like a for real team. And when we play them later in last season, so that the Panthers completely dominated them and shut them
Yeah,
down. They look like a regular season team, and we look like a playoff team. And I told you, like, bro, that team looks like if we have to face Detroit in the playoffs, we'll sweep them. So anyway, yeah.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. They really didn't do anything to make themselves better, and kind of weird. Like looking at New Jersey and the moves they made, and some of the teams that try to improve. Ottawa with Olmark, that might get them to a wild card. For me, and this is gonna be a super hot take and whatever. To me, the Edmonton Oilers are going to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs. I think that
Oh, goddamn.
they're going all in, like on offense when they already have offense. To me, it's just bizarre what they've done. On paper, it looks great. They brought in a lot of good players, and they have the same players. Hyman, Draisaitl, McDavid. They're gonna be amazing in the season. But with Nashville improving, Vancouver should still be there. Colorado's gonna have a chip on the shoulder. I just don't know. I think they're just gonna get bounced in the first round, and I think this past season was it was so strange for them that once they overcame that terrible start, they got a lot of confidence, and that can be misleading because I don't expect them to struggle that much to start the season. They still have a goaltending problem. They still have a defending problem. And I just don't see it. Like, other than, you take away the power play, that's another team that's just power play. I mean, the Panthers have what, one power play goal or something in the finals. like it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That carries you through the season, maybe, but I don't know. I think that the Oilers are gonna get bounced in the first round, regardless of who they play. If they get Colorado or a team like that, God forbid, or because of whatever, there's a wild card. Or if they get Nashville, Seattle might take a step forward. I think just the West is very, very competitive right now. So even if they win the division, I think they'll get a tough matchup. The Golden Knights are gonna compete. A lot of these teams are gonna come back with a vengeance, and I just don't see the Oilers making a run unless Mike David takes over. And as we see, like he's really good even in the playoffs. But it's just very hard when Draisaitl disappeared and Hyman is not allowed to do his thing in front of the goaltender. So yeah, that's my hot take for that. And plus, I'm starting to hate the Oilers and their fans. So
No, I think it is odd day because I wouldn't say that the first round would be where they get bounced, but I do think that it's going to be hard to replicate what they did this year. Um, it's just hard to do it. This is why I don't expect the Panthers to make another run. But yeah, first round kind of a hot take because obviously you do expect them to be good. I don't know that they're better, but yeah, they're still focusing on offense and guys that don't necessarily. Jeff Skinner doesn't play any defense. Like that's just going to be a train wreck in terms of playing defense. Um, and now Evander Kane is kind of the odd man out, and they have lost some talent, and also they need to extend Robert and Holloway, and that means that they're going to have to let go either Kane or a couple other guys. So they're not going to be as deep as people think. And yeah, the defensive core has gaps. So yeah, I mean, I think the Oilers are kind of an up and down team. I guess I've been sort of debating like what the other hot take I could have is, but one hot take I have, I guess, is that the Predators are not going to be as good as people think. And I think the Predators on paper are better because they lost Jason Zucker and Beauvillier, who now like weren't necessarily like Tyson Berry. And they have Brady Shea, who's good, and Stamkos and Marchessault. But these guys are older, man. I think Stamkos for years, $8 million is an overpay. Stamkos is a defensive liability. Marchessault is not like known as a defensive stalwart.
yeah, and they're older. They're getting older.
And they're getting older, and they were in contract years, and they were trying to get their cookies. And yeah, Marchessault's going to be 34 before a year's end. And Shea is a good addition, but they lost McDonough. So I just don't. I think they're going to be more offensive, but I think their defense is going to struggle. I think Saros can be pulling them more strain. And I think the age of these guys, whether it's through injuries or just having to keep up, even if they made it, I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs, but I think that similar to this year, even if they made the playoffs, that's one of those teams that I think will get bounced easier than people think. And I think they kind of overachieved last year. So yeah, I'm just not so on Nashville. I think again on paper with the names, it looks better. I think I saw Stamkos against Florida. Even if he's scoring, he's a liability. I'm not sold at this point in his career. And I think it would have been more nostalgic for Tampa to keep him, and if maybe we would have signed him for like 3 years times 6, whatever, just to let him retire. But yeah, I'm not. Everybody was like losing their mind with Nashville again. Bold, respect the boldness, and they do have an older team, so they do need to go for it now. But I don't see it, man. I don't see it. I think it's all more flashy names than legit, a legit team that can actually win a cup or make a run.
Yeah, and you still have Burnett, he's a good coach, but to me, there's still something missing there with him behind the bench. And yeah, it's another team that kind of went all in, and the expectations are there, so that can definitely work against you. Um, yeah, I was looking at the standings and just kind of thinking and some of it is just wishful thinking on where some of the teams might end up. Um, but for me, I think this is finally the year where the Maple Leafs drop to a wild card. I just think that they're putting they thinking that with Berube, that's gonna make all the difference. Because honestly, that's all they really did. to change their ways. And I do think that in terms of analytics and having a system, I don't think Keith was a bad coach. I think he's just not. He just didn't know how to handle the personalities and kind of just went along with the plan with Shanahan. And I just think Berube is either gonna be too harsh on the guys, and he's gonna lose some of the locker room, some of the guys, like it happened in St. Louis that last year. Last year, and I just think it's a mistake for them to think that a coaching change alone is gonna make a difference. And everybody expects, again, it's the same expectation. Everybody expects them to just get into the playoffs easily and kind of go from there. I don't think it's gonna be that easy having a new coach when you've had Keith for the past 5 years. It's not gonna be easy on the guys. I don't think that the system's going to be different. They're going to have to defend. You know, players are going to make mistakes. They're going to get benched for real this time. You know, Riley might just get benched. Like, to me, it's just theater, and I'll enjoy every second of it. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I do think that this is the year where the Leafs drop into a wild card spot or see themselves trying to battling to get up there. You know, obviously contradicting myself, because if the Bruins got worse, then who knows what's going to happen with Tampa and all that stuff. But I think this is the year where that kind of happens.
Yeah, I don't think the Bruins got worse. I think Ottawa can bounce back. Buffalo and Detroit will win enough games to make it difficult for people. I think with the Leafs, I think they're again an injury away in the top four defense to really have some holes, and the forward core looks pretty thin in the bottom six. Even in the top six, they're going to have Matthew Nice.
That bottom six is one of the worst.
And Matthew Nice is expected to be in the top six. They have no other option. He has the Taper Tusi spot. And then they're going to need either Robertson up there, or they're going to have to have Domi on the wing. And then nobody centers at the third line, Camp, or I don't know who, or maybe Minton, a child.
Yeah, Camp. Well, I think has a no trade clause.
Yeah, McMahon, I think overachieved last year. I think I was hearing somebody talk that McMahon is not that kind of player that's going to give more than 15 goals.
No, he's a big guy, but
and there's going to be tension with Berube. Every time this has changed the system, I think we saw with the Panthers first year with Maurice, there's always confusion, always hard. Guys are resistant to change. There'll be a little bit of drama. I don't know if he's going to bench everybody, but I think obviously there'll be a change of pace and expect more accountability, more physicality, and we'll see how it looks. But can the guys sacrifice the offense? And I just don't buy that they're willing to do that. So I could see that roster, if there's a couple of injuries, kind of struggling a little bit more. And then the goaltending question, like you said, and I don't think that the Atlantic necessarily is going to be easier. Though one exception is my last hot take, my hottest of all takes, is that the Lightning are going to miss the playoffs. And the top six is good. You look at what they have now with Gensel.
That is wild.
You know what it is? Their defense is going to be atrocious. It already was soft against the Panthers. You saw it. It was soft last season. You look at their makeup, man, and again, you don't have an issue with like Kucherov, Point, and Gensel. Good luck playing defense on that line.
That top line is gonna play no defense.
It's gonna score, but it's gonna get scored on. Hagel, Cirelli, Nick Paul, decent second line, hardworking, but again, you can neutralize them.
And I think Nick Paul was in the third line.
Huh?
I think Nick Paul was in the third line.
Well, he's been moved to the second line. Well, because Duclair was there. Because Anthony Duclair was there.
That's right.
Or whatever. That's right. So Duclair was in the top six. But then now have Connor Sherry, Cam Atkinson, Girgensons was a fourth liner, Glenn Denning was a fourth liner, Asimov was a fourth liner. Like the rest of their team is fourth liners, including the third line. And then you have Hedman and now McDonough, who's an old bastard, 35, going to be 36. Chernak, just a big dude. And then Moser that they brought in, Perbix, Radish, Lillibird, like same guys that we played. That defensive core was not good. Now they don't have Sergachev to really rely on and improve. They have an older McDonough. Hedman is 33, going to be 34. Um, I think they're going to get lit up, and they cannot afford injuries to any of their top guys because they get thin pretty quick. Um, and they already were in that position last year. They already were trending down. And I'll say this about Stamkos. One thing about the other comment that I made about Nashville. Stamkos scored 5 goals and 6 points in 5 games against the Panthers. He was the leading scorer in that series. He was also -5. He got lit up by the Panthers. And he's been a minus player the last 2 seasons. And everybody says he's still a 40-goal scorer. He was -21 last year, bro, with 81 points scored. Like that's all power play points. And 505, he's awful. And people don't look and want to think about that. But I'm telling you, looking back, our East is serious with the Lightning series, bro. That Lightning series was like not even that physical. Like it was, I think that there's a real chance that the Lightning. I think that the reason I think that is that I agree with you that I think the coach, what's his name?
Cooper.
John Cooper. I think he's got to go, and he's a great coach, but it's just way too long. Like you've made 4 finals, you got 2 rings, the team's starting to trend down, people are tuning you out. You don't have a deep team. You don't. What else can you do? Vasilevsky, hasn't looked the same after the surgery. Like I think he's got to go. Just refresh the whole thing, refresh the team. Figure out what to do because you're getting old pretty quick and you're getting thin pretty quick.
Yeah, this is like year 5 or 6 of them being really competitive. So I just think that eventually
it's longer than that. If you look back, actually,
Yeah.
and he's been there over a decade now as a coach.
Yeah. If you look at when they were President's Trophy winner and then they got swept by Columbus. So yeah, you're right. It's been a while.
No, they made a finals with him like years ago. People forget them. When they were younger, they were not known as winners, and they lost in the finals. But
yeah, and if you look at my dog is going crazy. If you look at the performance on in the playoffs, that's kind of telling. The last 2 years. I mean, they lost to the Leafs, bro. Like, come on, man. And that wasn't even like the Leafs were decent this past year. They played better. They came back against the Bruins, and I thought that they were actually really, really solid. But man, time's up for that for them for that.
Yeah, and even when they made their runs, let's be real, they faced Montreal and they faced the Islanders and they faced the Rangers, who we know are not like legit. Carolina has proven that they cannot get to the finals. And again, I'm not saying they're easy outs, but the Panthers have beaten them. And we haven't had those like Montreal in the finals or the Islanders in the conference finals. Teams that you're better than, like made magical runs, and all of a sudden they've been the Panthers who had Huberdeau and they know how to play in the playoffs 2 years in a row. Like, again, they deserve their titles. They were a really tough team, but even the eye test back then told you they weren't always the better team. So,
yeah, I agree. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs. I think that's crazy, but I think
they almost did this year, bro.
I think at worst
they almost did. They had to really push at the end.
I don't think they'll be worse, but yeah, it depends on Vasilevsky, right? I think that's what it depends on, because they always the defense has always been let Vasilevsky do his thing, and I think that's gonna be the difference. But yeah, we're number 2, right?
No, last one.
All right, what was my first one?
I don't remember. Who cares, bro? Keep going.
Oh, the Oilers.
Summertime.
The Oilers, Toronto. My last one is is a hot take, especially to you, but I don't know about the rest of the league. I think the Panthers are going back to the finals. I think.
Bro, stop.
No, man, this is it's burning hot, bro. Boiling water. I think. Listen, man, the Panthers did not get worse. I don't think they did.
A little bit on paper.
I think you lose OEL, just to complete that third pairing. I don't know if Balinskis or Schmidt are gonna be good. Bob Quist is kind of a wild card. You don't know what you're gonna get, and he's only 23. You lost Stanlin, who was really good on the PK, but you You get a couple guys that can help out. And I think the biggest question mark is it looks like they're gonna play at least a couple of the kids, Justin Sordiff and Mackie Samoskevich. So
We got less experience, but we got younger and more skill, is what I would
yeah,
say.
but I don't think like it's a huge difference. Like I think our scoring is gonna stay about the same. I don't think we're gonna be as good on defense as we were last year. Maybe we are, but I don't know if the effort's gonna be there. There's always a bit of a drop off, but maybe not. You never know. Um, you extended Reinhardt, you don't know what type of season he's gonna give you, and our top line really carried us through a lot of games this year and the playoffs. Um, so those are all question marks. And Bob is Bob. You might just get a crappy series and lose in 5 or 6. But I think once the playoffs start, if they put in the effort, I think they can get back to the finals. They went through really tough goaltending last year. Vasilevsky, Swayman, Shesterkin. And then obviously the finals was a little bit easier other than losing those 3 games in embarrassing fashion. But yeah, that's why I think it's a hot take. I don't think that that's the expectation. I don't even know if I believe it, but I can see it happening, and I do think that if they turn it on in the playoffs, they'll get back to the finals. I just don't see any other team in the East that's gonna just beat them. I just don't see it. I don't see another team just kind of outplaying them in a 7-game series, at least not in the East.
Yeah,
So
I think the way that they don't get back is either injuries or a little bit of the lack of experience for some of the younger guys, and maybe not work trying as hard when it gets difficult in some of these tight series. I mean, it was tight against. I mean, we were better, but the series was tied, against the Rangers, against the Bruins, and a goal here or there can make a huge difference. And I think the guys may not be willing as much to really go that extra mile just because they're tired, because it's hard, because it's just mentally draining, man. Um, and so that would be the argument for why you don't get back to the finals. It's like a lot of things have to work your way. We were definitely healthy this season in the playoffs, unlike the first run. So that's why I think the factors are kind of, where younger guys may not be as good to rely on. They just need the experience. The argument that they can make a run again is that, like you said, I think the East, when you look at, the Rangers, can we match up even with the changes well against them? And Cedar can still make a deadline move. Yeah, I think we do. I think the Bruins will be really tough either way anyway to beat, but they're a team that doesn't score a ton, so you can kind of stick with them. Leaves are softer up front, or weaker up front. Lightning, to my mind, are just a good matchup for the Panthers to go against. And I don't see any of the other teams. The Carolina, I think, got weaker. And I don't see any other teams that would make the playoffs, like Detroit or Buffalo or Ottawa, whatever, in a playoff series, necessarily beating the Panthers when it gets tough. If we're healthy, we're going to be a tough out again. I just don't know that we get back to the finals. I think that is incredibly difficult to do. I think the year after, maybe, that you see that happen. Even Chicago, they won, then they were kicked out in the first or second round, won again, and they were kicked out a couple of years, then won again. LA won in 2012, 2014. It's rare for the Pittsburgh to win the back-to-back or whatever. Like, you usually see the sort of the gaps. Even the Detroit Red Wings, where they were killing it, they would win every couple of years or whatever. Colorado the same. So anyway, that's my thinking about it. But I don't know that it's like a super hot take, just because they are legit, like a legit team in the East still. And if the young guys can, I think we're going to allow more goals this season, but I also think we're going to score more goals. I think offensively going to
yeah,
more.
yeah, it'll look a little different most likely. And then come playoff time, you never know.
And so again, some contract years for Verhage, Bennett,
Bennett, yeah.
Ekblad, that might help us actually in the regular season, and then we'll see in the playoffs. But
Yeah. It's kind of hard to have hot takes, man. Like
I mean, whatever. They're hot takes from depending on the context
you
and
really
what
have
the
to go to
trends
some
are.
extreme, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
like
New Jersey's gonna win the President's Trophy.
that's not even a hot take. Some people had expected that to happen this year. I think a bigger hot take is New Jersey doesn't get back to what they were 2 years ago, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's closer to what they were this year. That would be a hotter take because everybody's expecting them to bounce back, and I'm on the fence about whether that will happen. I think some of these teams can get overrated. Team makeup and consistency matters, I think. I will say Dallas, I think, got a little bit worse on defense. I think Lyubushkin and Dumba are not huge improvements to their D. But we'll see, man. We'll see how the season goes. And yeah, let's see what we want to talk about next week. Maybe we talk about some prospects or talk about some overlooked stuff in the NHL that we can talk about.
Yeah, we'll come up with some topics just to keep it entertaining. It's fun, just kind of doing random stuff. Once the season starts, then you start dialing in into what's going on. Um, but yeah, this is fun. I think we can do some deeper dives on some of the teams too. New Jersey would be one of them. Even Toronto. I don't know. It's exciting, man. Like for me, the offseason is just exciting because of that. All the trades and all the new things happening around, and just all the teams that are kind of. There's always 2 or 3 teams going for it, like Nashville, Oilers, even Tampa. Like some of the moves are kind of crazy and maybe not that logical, at least to us as fans. Obviously, they have the stats and their analytics, and they know what they're doing.
I mean, they
Carolina,
do and they don't. It's just,
yeah.
some teams get desperate. Some teams.
Carolina's another team that's going to be a curious one.
Yeah, they're starting to unravel a little bit.
Yeah, they've been there for so long, and they
don't want to pay their guys, and
everybody. Yeah, that's true. They're kind of.
It's not clear outside of Bajo who like their core is. You would think Jarvis's or Nature's would have been, but apparently they're not on the same page, and there's just tension there. And now their defense got worse. Lost Pesci, lost Shea, no plan to keep them. I don't know. And I know it's hard. Again, you can't keep everybody. They had a very deep team and all that stuff. But again, they had a lot of the same guy. So to me, they should have shifted their models. I think for the Panthers, every line has an identity. And I think that is something that gets overlooked in winning teams. You could say that about Vegas. You could say that about a lot of other teams, like even Tampa, man. You could say that. And for the Panthers, you could tell the first line was the scoring line and the two-way line. The second line is the I'm going to hit you, but also go to the net and score goals. And then the third line was a young line that you could trust to go against top teams and shut them down. And then the fourth line, just the scrappy vets that are going to skate fast and going to be in your face the whole time and not going to make huge mistakes. So, now this season that identity is going to shift a little bit for the Panthers, but the parents and the consistency of the parents, when you look at it, it will be similar. Right, you still got your top pair with a guy on a contract here. You still got Mikkola protecting the offensive guy and Montour, and now it's going to be Buckwitz, most likely. And then you have the 2 vets as his third pairing that you can mostly rely on. One of them can carry the puck because Schmidt can carry the puck as quarterback the power play before.
Yeah.
And then you have a Valinskis or like these guys there, and a fourth line might have more skill, but can play 2 ways. All the guys on our third line are going to be centers, basically, because Sertiv plays centers, Nosha plays center, Buckwitz plays center, and you could technically even say that of the third line outside of Mackey, who's going to probably slot in there. So anyway, man, and Mackey's ready to come in and score 20 goals, if he's healthy. So
preseason. Once we get closer,
we'll break it down.
Competitive, and I'm sure the fourth line will be defined in the preseason, and we'll go for that. We know our top 6, it's set if they put Mackey up there, and our top 9 really. So we'll see how that goes. All right, we'll wrap it up there, guys. Hope you enjoyed the content. Leave us any comments with your hot takes, or if you disagree with any of ours and why you disagree. And we'll try to reply as much as we can. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you all next week. Peace.